The Owl House has ended, and while it's bittersweet, there's still so much magic and lore that we get to talk about. Critical stuff with real-world roots that was not fully explained in the show, either on purpose to keep the unknown wild world of wonder alive, or cut because of the tragically early wrap. And these are really intricate mysteries, unexplained things that have a lot of real-world tie-ins and folklore to back them up. Today, we're dissecting something that's probably the biggest taboo in the Owl House lore. We're digging into Grimwalkers, the once extinct, potentially feared creations that roamed the Boiling Isles. And our world too, if you believe the stories. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of this creepy lore, these videos take a lot of time to research, make, and produce, so sponsors really do make a difference. And today's animated lore dive video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. You may have heard of it. Raid is a free-to-play mobile and desktop game with daily rewards, missions, player versus player, clan battles, and so much more that keeps it fresh and exciting. There are over 600 champions, and my favorites are inspired by real old folklore, tales, and mythology, which I'm all about on this channel. Morrigan is quite the creepy catch. Top 3 reasons: she blocks heals, scares opponents from attacking, and cranks up team speed so that enemies never get a chance. And just looks so spooky undead cool. Okay, so that's 4 reasons. Love lore? Well, Raid's added many new champion bios and has a brand new animated series, Raid Call of the Arbiter. Right now there's new champions, a new artifact set, events, and more new content related to the limited series. With all this exciting stuff and more coming to Raid, if you haven't started playing yet, now's your time. Use my link in the description or scan my QR code to get awesome bonuses like Epic Champion Talia and everything you need to get started and get ahead. Thank you to Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video. Speaking of which, there's so much to cover, so to quickly recap, because all of this does have ties to folklore and modern ideas. Belos, the evil one, has been creating Grimwalkers, various copies of his dead brother Caleb, to serve him in the role of Golden Guard for what seems like centuries. We even get to see the recipe and other obscure info, like them having magenta eyes, in this book. Hold on to that one because I'm dissecting each piece of this puzzle. These beings, whose creation was maybe at one time outlawed, at least they were for sure thought extinct given the title of this book, Grimwalker's Extinction, and feared, given how Hunter is afraid of everyone's reactions if they find out his secret, seem to be Frankenstein together and then buried, not in Mother Earth, but I guess Papa Titan, to gestate like Urukai until they are around teenaged. But don't wake them too soon because things get a little goopy and unstable. They seem to have no memories, or else canned memories, of the events framed in Belos' mind, but none of their own at first. And there have been many. They all served faithfully until they didn't. When they became self-aware and willful, they were callously offed and replaced. But let's hop right into the cauldron with that recipe for creating Grimwalkers. At first brush, it does appear that these are in the school of abomination magic, creating something from ingredients to mindlessly do your bidding. And we do know that Belos does have a sweet spot for abomination magic, both in his support of Amity's family business and Willow even mentioning that the abomination track has been noted for opening more opportunities for a witch's future. Coven preference aside, the abomination and even Grimwalkers kind of appear like golems, which are constructs created from clay and other natural materials to do the caster's bidding. All of the ingredients for the Grimwalkers are earthy, clay-ish, or organic as well. This is an old tradition, and it appears in media today, like Guild Wars' golems, which are made out of metal and other components. These, quote, think and act like they are programmed to do. Grimwalkers seem like they would be more akin to golems and constructs were it not for the fact that they become self-aware. Hunter has a bunch of books about Grimwalkers stashed among the Hexmix and Appleblood trash. Grimwalkers, Grimwalker Extinction, and The Legend of Grimwalkers, and have wills of their own, which is precisely what gets them killed by their creator in the end. So let's get cooking, or summoning? Because yes, of course, all these specific ingredients all have significant folklore counterparts. Belos is essentially making many Frankenstein's monsters with all these various meaty functional body parts from different enchanted creatures. First, we need a power source, so Galderstones it is. On the Boiling Isles, these enhance magic, and in the case of Grimwalkers, they act as the heart and power, life force, like how some media interpret Mary Shelley's Dr. Frankenstein used lightning to innervate his creation. It's alive, or starting to be anyway, because of course we need skin, or in this case palistrum wood, to provide a source of keratin, which is actually a protein that helps form hair, nails, and the skin's outer layer or epidermis. Keratin supports skin, heals wounds, and keeps nails and hair healthy. And palistrum keratin probably does all of that and more. like contain all these enchanted bits and pieces, like lungs of a stone sleeper. Gotta be able to breathe after all, and these are earthy. Anyway, check that one off the list. Now, Selkie scales. These are super significant because a Selkie is a folklore shapeshifter that appears across the world. The Selkie, or sealskin woman story, is told in Celtic, Scottish, Icelandic, and Siberian folklore, and even among groups in Northwest America. This creature, initially appearing in their seal form, falls in love with a mortal for whom they take off their skin in order to transform into a human. Sometimes there's an agreement for wearing the skin occasionally, on and off, but other times the mortal takes the skin and hides it or destroys it so that the Selkie can no longer transform into their original form. Bummer. This is similar to other supernatural fleshwalker lore in the Americas, I don't want to say the name, that can take the shape of anything or anyone so long as they have its skin. So these Selkie scales may allow whatever the gestating being started out as to grow into whichever form suited them best, or take the form of the raw base material the caster is trying to copy, in this case Caleb. Which, before jumping into that last ingredient, can we take a moment to appreciate how absolutely messed up it is for Hunter, the most recent Golden Guard Grimwalker, to blindly obey Bellos and collect the Selkie scales that will essentially grow his own replacement? That's like Brothers Grimm juniper tree levels of, grim deception. Finally, we get to the bone of Ortet, which in botany, and according to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, an Ortet is the original plant from which the members of a clone have descended. So basically, Bellos has been using bones from his dead brother's body to try to clone him. The level of accuracy of the clone could have something to do with which bone was selected to grow the Grimwalker, and why Hunter is one of the most accurate to date. Maybe the skull was used. This also means that there would be a limited number of times Bellos could attempt the spell recipe thing, a bit over 200, which is a lot of copies walking around at once, yes. But from what I gather, Bellos only ever has one alive at a time, which is where we head into our real world and into the lore of the Doppelwalkers. Maybe better known as Doppelgangers, this German word literally means double walker or double goer. They are an exact copy of another living being and have been around for quite a long time and in quite a few places. They can either be an apparition or something solid and, quote, breathing, but they are something more than just a lookalike. They essentially are you, down to how you talk, act, dress, and even move. So the tie-in from Grimwalkers to Doppelwalkers of copies of people is pretty strong, and it only gets more chilling. For you see, in some doppelganger lore, seeing your double is a sign that you are going to die very soon. They are a harbinger of your death. In a way, the same holds true for Hunter when he sees his past selves in Bellos' mind. He is very clearly in danger. Maybe not from his Grimwalker selves, but there is very real danger close at hand, and from then on he has to run or face Bellos' wrath and death. Doppelgangers appear at the moment of death, but there are some instances of them appearing for an indefinite period of time before the catastrophe strikes. And other people report seeing that doubled person where they are clearly not. Seeing someone who isn't there, like seeing a friend at a coffee shop when really they were presenting in class, that kind of thing. Some doubles can affect the physical world, like this older tragic recounting where Mr. H sees his friend, Mr. C, speed walking some distance ahead of him. He calls to him, but C does not stop and keeps on trucking, eventually opening a gate and then slamming it forcefully in H's face. Rude. Then he's nowhere to be seen. The kicker, though, is that Mr. C was confined to his bed for days at the time and couldn't possibly have been running about town and slamming gates. Sometime later, Mr. H decides that this is a funny tale to tell people around a fireside chat, and after regaling the party with it, jokes, because I've seen Mr. C's wraith, he clearly doesn't have long to live, lol, and everyone just laughs. Side note, before doppelganger became the more common term in English, wraith was used here. But here's the thing, not a few days after this telling, Mr. C gets a putrid sore throat and dies. And Mr. H follows him to the grave just a few days after that. Some consider this Chase Gate incident a tryst, or an appointment to meet again between those spirits so soon to be free. Their doubles, solid enough to be able to affect the physical world, portended something dire to come. Some doppelgangers appear to loved ones to tell them that they, the person being doubled and doing the visiting, are about to meet with catastrophe. You know, to warn a fiancé, say, and to be considerate so that they can make alternate plans for their future. People who are fatally ill claim to be both in their beds and actively walking about town, feeling as though they are split in two. Before moving on to more dangerous doppelgangers, if impending death wasn't threatening enough, there is a famous example of none other than Percy Shelley. You know, the Mary Shelley, author of Frankenstein, because we needed one more mention of that. Well, her husband saw his doppelganger and also died shortly thereafter. In the early hours of June 23rd, Percy had had a nightmare about the house collapsing in a flood, and he had seen the figure of himself which met him as he walked on the terrace and said to him, "How long do you mean to be content?" Shelley had often seen these figures when ill. He had met his own doppelganger, and on July 8th of 1822, Percy Shelley drowned. In other lore, if you see your doppelganger, you have to kill it or be killed by it. There can only be one. Just like the Golden Guard, there's only one at a time. Hunter being sent to find the parts to make his replacements is, in a metaphorical way, him already killing himself to make way for the next versions. There's a more modern take on this too, in Curon, which is a very cool dark show based on a real event. The actual Curon rests silently 22 meters underwater, having been submerged in order to build a dam. You can still see the bell tower today, but all the towns around it had to be abandoned. Now the show uses this dangerous lake as a spawning ground for doppelgangers. Like the Owl House, all of these copies are teenagers, copies of the residents, and all seem to have no memories, but instead an urgent need to hurt. They are born not out of the ground, but when a person's emotions are too strong, these doppelgangers simply walk out of the lake, heralded by an incessant ringing of the long silent bell. Whoever hears this bell tolling in their head knows that they are next, and that their double is on the way. These doppelgangers are violent and set out to kill their original self and seem to have the exact opposite motivations and personality, or more precisely, no reservations about acting on impulses. It's kill or be killed. The difference in personalities kinda goes along with the Grimwalker copies not being exactly replicas of the Ortet Caleb. The doppelganger having an opposite personality makeup, despite an exact outward appearance, even appears in 1846 in Dostoevsky's novel The Double. Here, the double walker uses everything contrary to the original's personality to take over their life. There can only be one. There are a few more pop culture examples of doubles that are worth mentioning. The show The Vampire Diaries features doppelgangers, exact copies of a person who are born lifetimes apart that develop their own experiences and memories, like each new Golden Guard put on a longer lifetime between births. The movie The Prestige uses doppelgangers, exact copies of the performer, to make an impossible magic show seem real. And oh boy, is it real! These copies are killed with every performance. Hundreds. Honestly, this is the biggest, darkest tie-in to Bellows callously killing his creations when they no longer serve their purpose to him, or get too troublesome. These doppelgangers are created to be sacrificed, and nothing more. If you've seen Lock and Key, you'll know that the identity key lets any person look and sound exactly like any other person, or a completely made-up person. The individual using the key still retains their personality, but to all other senses, they are someone else. Finally, if we're talking exact copies of body, mind, soul, experiences, and DNA over millennia, there can be none other than the Duncan Idaho, arguably the most important reoccurring character in the Dune series. He's also a copy of a copy of a copy, you get it. He's a perfect genetic clone, and his rebirth spans centuries and lifetimes, and it's a really big whole mess with creepy tanks and whatnot, but each clone's mind starts off fresh, kinda like Hunter and the other Golden Guard Grimwalkers. The Duncan's memories are passed on through an awakening of sorts, a physical and emotional unlocking of all the previous lifetimes before. Now, I imagine the Golden Guards are just spoon-fed the same stories and images of what Bellows wants them to, quote, know upon awakening, and that they develop their own minds and stories from there until they don't. Owl House is such a brilliant show, especially in how it creates worlds and lore of its own from pieces and parts of older and obscure folklore. Kinda like Dr. Frankenstein does, the show made its own special type of Grimwalker out of these ingredients of fantastic stories and lore. It truly makes it its own, and I think that's why the Owl House is so magical, and why I keep coming back to it. But we've explored some historic, pop culture, and folklore examples of double walkers, as well as picked apart how to make Grimwalkers, and I hope it helped paint a better picture of what the mysterious Owl House Grimwalkers could be. Let me know what you think they are in the comments below. And do be sure to subscribe for the next batch of creepy stories and lore coming out of the cauldron quite soon. Goodbye!